Leo Rautins, drafted by the Sixers, by the way, 83. It was a good time to be drafted by the Sixers. Probably the last good time to be part of the Sixers, save for 1 year with Allen Iverson. Leo now does the television work for the Raptors, color analyst, and he joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, where the Sixers Raptors, Leo, Brett Brown said the other night that the math has not been flattering. 3-21 in his career against this Raptors team. But both teams are vastly different from any other time they have played. Back on February 5th was the last time. These two teams are almost brand new. So does the Raptors' domination of the Sixers in recent times factor into this series?
I don't think so. Even talking to all the Raptor players, hey, Kawhi Leonard is 13-0 lifetime against the Philadelphia 76ers. So, all that you could take and throw it out the window. The teams have made changes. You've had trades. They're playing at a different level right now. And once you get into the playoffs, it's all about, you've got to win 4 games. So whatever happened, what's led up to this point, doesn't really make a difference.
Kawhi Leonard, obviously a big difference maker. You've been around the team in all of their shortcomings over the years where they just couldn't get by LeBron James. How has Kawhi changed the, confidence level of the organization?
Oh, big time. Even Kyle Lowry was talking about it this morning. He said, the guy is so locked in and focused, it's changed the way we all approach the game completely. And, even last year, the Raptors finished first. They won 59 games. I didn't sense there was a lot of respect or fear or intimidation with anybody that faced the Raptors, even though they were a very, very good team. This time around, you sense it. Teams respect this team a great deal. And when you got a player like Kawhi Leonard, he's as good as you get, two-way player. I mean, he can lock you up at one end, he can drop 30 on you at the other. And that changes the way this entire team plays. And people know it, and people respect it. And it's interesting. Also, within this team, in the past, there's been tension. You get into postseason, the history of this team, none of that this season. This team just focuses in on game to game, and you don't sense any tension other than the fact that they understand what they need to do and they go do it.
Leo, he has consistently shut down Ben Simmons, whether he'd be in San Antonio and now in Toronto. Do you anticipate that will be his primary focus in this series? Because the Sixers, as we mentioned, are different. Jimmy Butler's here, Tobias Harris is here, so there are other options that if you shut Simmons down, that they might have other ways to beat you. So does he float, or is his modus operandi to shut down Simmons?
I think it's going to be a little bit everything, much like the Sixers do. The Raptors have a lot of same-size players that have the ability to switch. So, when you're looking at, Butler, Harris, Simmons, even J.J. Redick for that matter, I think the Raptors will be doing some switching just like Philadelphia does. But at the same time, I think that he will be the primary matchup for Simmons. He's done a great job to this point. And he's just a tough guy to deal with. I mean, one thing about Kawhi Leonard, he's extremely strong. And if you look at Simmons and what his strengths are in transition, coming down the floor, using his size, getting into the paint, I think he's a guy that, the misconception is, okay, you just let him shoot, give him space, back off. Well, yeah, you'd like him to shoot because he doesn't want to shoot. But at the same time, if you back off, he comes at you, he builds up a head of steam, and you got a real problem trying to deal with him. And I think part of the success Kawhi's had, you got to get to him. You got to get to him early. Yes, if you're going to encourage anything, you encourage the shot, but you got to slow him down and not allow him to operate at a high level of speed and intensity that he can get if you just don't get to him early. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. It's been a lot of fun, and it's just another, I think, of a lot of intriguing matchups that we're going to be able to watch in this series.
No question. And the other guy who, you get to see him almost every night is Siakam. How far this guy has come. And he almost has elevated himself to, the Robin to Kawhi Leonard's Batman. He seems like he has elevated him to that number 2 star on that team almost.
Oh, yeah. And that's why when you talk about these two teams, Kawhi Leonard from the last time, I should say, Pascal Siakam from the last time they played February 5th is not the same player anymore. He very easily could have been an all-star. I think he's going to be the most improved player in the NBA. And now, he's from February to now, he's gotten better again. I mean, he dominated in the Orlando Magic series in the opening round. And there are times when, if Kawhi's struggling or if Kawhi's not knocking down a shot, he's there. If Kyle Lowry doesn't have it, he's there. And the great thing about his game is you don't have to call a play for this kid. He runs the floor. He gets it off the offensive glass. He scores in transition. He breaks you down one-on-one. He'll post you up. He'll knock down a three, which is something that you couldn't count on a season ago. So he's become a big-time player. And at the same time, much like Kawhi, he's becoming or understanding that he can become a lockdown player at the defensive end with his length. And he really is a student of the game. Like, he watches, he learns every single day, and he starts adapting, figuring out, how to play angles. And quite frankly, I don't even think he's scratching the surface yet. So he's another difference maker that, you really couldn't factor in as much the last time these two teams squared off.
Leo Rautins with us, the color analyst for the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors take on the Sixers. It's Saturday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. A lot of people thought that, the Gasol move, at the time, it just was like, okay, they got Gasol. He's slowing down a little bit, but, former Defensive Player of the Year. And then you look at Embiid's numbers against the Memphis Grizzlies, and he has had some problems. Was Toronto looking at this potential matchup when they made that trade?
I think so. I think they were looking at, every matchup they could potentially have in the East to say, who can make a difference. And you got to realize that Jonas Valanciunas, who they traded away, quite frankly, dominated Embiid the last two games they played. Embiid didn't even want anything to do with him, with JV taking it down low at him. So that was a guy that was having some success at this point in time in his career. But, with Gasol, and we saw that in that first round against Vucevic in Orlando, Vucevic, an all-star, putting up crazy numbers against the Raptors. I think he was averaging like 20 and 15 against Toronto, shooting better than 50%. And he literally was a non-factor in that series. And what Gasol does, and this is where it's going to be interesting in a matchup with Embiid, he's not jumping for fakes. So he's not going to leave his feet and bite on fakes. He's going to stay down. He's deceptively quick. He contests every shot. He comes high on, he really challenges pick and rolls. Philadelphia runs a lot of cutters off Embiid, so he'll do a lot of bumping and getting in the way of people. And he just doesn't let you get to where you want to get to. Embiid, one of the things he likes to do, he likes to bully smaller players or guys he's got the advantage on physically. And that's going to be very hard to do with Gasol. So, again, this is one of those matchups that you're really looking forward to seeing, in this series. And, a lot of people, like you said, were worried about his age. But quite honestly, the way Gasol played in that first round, he definitely looked every bit the Defensive Player of the Year he was in 2013.
That should be an interesting matchup to watch, and there's a lot of good ones here, but is there a spot on the floor where Toronto feels that they have a nice advantage? It has to be with Kawhi. I mean, he's got to be the superstar of this series. And I don't know who's going to be able to deal with him with the Sixers. He's been playing great basketball, shooting the ball extremely well. He's inside-outside guy, and that defensively, he kind of commands the matchup that he has. So, I think he's the one guy that Philly hasn't shown the ability to deal with. Now, again, Philadelphia with Butler and Harris and Simmons defensively are going to be able to create some more problems for everybody, including Leonard. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But, he has to be – I mean, he's the reason that every other guy in the Toronto Raptors can puff out his chest and feel confident because he gives you that arrogance, that swag when you step on a floor, when you know you have him on your side. Let me ask you before we run here, is Tobias Harris is the new guy here. Butler, I think, played in the game against him, but the game that he played, there was no Kawhi, and maybe not Lowry in that game either. But adding Tobias Harris, What does that change with these two teams and how they match up?
Well, you got another weapon. You got a guy that's got some length. He can shoot the basketball, runs the floor. He can help you out in the glass. Defensively, he's there. So, Tobias Harris is just another really good player that makes that Sixers starting lineup as good as any starting lineup in the NBA. So, he creates a little bit of a matchup problem because, you got to decide who you want to put on him. Do you want Kyle Lowry chasing J.J. Redick, or do you want to risk Kyle Lowry on a player like Tobias Harris? I mean, Kyle's tough to try to post up. Very, very few guys get away with it. But it is taxing when you're guarding a bigger guy and exerting that force. So, that's just another one of those decisions you have to make, when you're dealing with a player like Tobias Harris. So, and he does take pressure off, when you got a player like Simmons, you want as many guys as you can that can shoot the basketball. And he's a guy that can't shoot. The way Simmons opens up the floor and tries to get into paint, he just creates great opportunities, and Harris is a guy that, hopefully can take advantage of that for Philadelphia.
We'll see how far Ben Simmons has come. He could be the key to the series. He really broke out against the Nets, but this is a far different animal in the Toronto Raptors. Leo Rautins, a former Sixer, by the way, drafted in the first round, 1983, 17th overall. Was the first Canadian ever drafted in the first round, and now, obviously, the Raptors are here, and he does their television work, and he was kind enough to join us right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Leo, appreciate the time, pal. We hope to catch up with you maybe further on in the series.
Sounds great, Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you.